Think your fiber optic connection in downtown Dubai is bulletproof? Think again. We are heading deep into the Arabian's desert most notorious dead zone to see if the Starlink can outperform the city's saturated grid. If you are a high-stake remote worker, orbital connectivity isn't just a luxury, it is the only way to stay unshakable. Metropolitan reliability is a myth that costs you not only your competitive edge, while everyone else struggles with the localized infrastructure and a single point of failure, we are dismantling the status quo by running a full stress test from the remote dunes. Watch us bypass the traditional grid to prove why the future of the work belongs exclusively to those using satellite redundancy. Imagine closing a multi-million-dollar deal from the middle of the Arabian desert without a single lag spike. We have ditched the physical cables of Starlink's low-latency orbital network to see if it truly offers universal connectivity. Join us as we push the most absolute limit of the remote work, turning the most isolated sands into a high-speed, high-leverage office. Before I completely deconstruct the death of the localized infrastructure, expose the exact mechanics of the low Earth orbit connectivity, and give you the precise architectural blueprint to decouple your career from the city grid using the newly licensed 2026 UAE Starlink network, hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell. I post daily videos showing you exactly how to navigate the global labor and capital market using cold, hard engineering logic. You do not want to miss these execution protocols. Stop relying on cables buried in your ground. It is time to secure your connection from space. Grab a notebook, we are about to engineer your geographic autonomy. Welcome back, I'm Dr. HR. To understand why my approach to the remote work infrastructure and the human capital is aggressively different from the aesthetic, superficial advice peddled by the digital nomad influencers, you must understand my underlying structural logic. I hold a PhD in Human Resources, a Master's from prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences TISS in Mumbai, and a Bachelor's in Computer Engineering. I do not look at internet connectivity as a basic utility. I look at it as a foundational lifeline of your executive leverage. Operating on the ground here in Dubai since 2010, consulting for the Tier 1 corporate entities and global banks, I have monitored exactly how elite operators mitigate operational risk. The highest paid executives do not allow their multi-million-dollar pitches to be destroyed by a severed fiber optic cable or a saturated 5G tower. They build structural redundancy. Let us systematically deconstruct this transition through 5 phases: the Metropolitan Myth, the high-stakes challenge, the myth-busting Contrarian, the 2026 Orbital execution, and the visual what-if of sovereign autonomy. Phase 1, the Metropolitan Myth, the fragility of the grid. We must first diagnose the exact debilitating vulnerability of the modern remote worker living in a major metropolis like Dubai. If you live in Dubai Marina, Business Bay, or downtown, you pay a massive premium for access to high-speed fiber optic internet. You believe that because you are in a Tier 1 global city, your connection is invincible. You log on to crucial Zoom calls with international stakeholders, trade volatile equities on global markets, and transfer massive data set assuming the ground beneath your feet will always support your data flow. You're operating under the Metropolitan Myth. Your flawless internet connection relies on a highly fragile, highly physical single point of failure. Your internet is delivered through a physical fiber optic cable buried in the sand. If a construction crew accidentally severs that line during a new building excavation, your entire building goes dark. If an unprecedented weather event floods the localized infrastructure, your router becomes a useless plastic box. Furthermore, you are entirely tethered to the physical location of that cable. If you want to escape the suffocating density of the city center for the weekend, if you want to travel to a remote farm in Northern Emirates, a secluded mountain retreat in Russell, or an isolated desert camp in Al Qudra, you instantly loses your executive bandwidth. You are forced to rely on inconsistent 4G signals that drop the moment you step out of the range of a cellular tower. If your ability to generate income is completely paralyzed the moment you leave your apartment, you are not a remote worker, you are a highly paid prisoner on a very long leash. The true remote work requires absolute geographic independence, and you cannot achieve independence if you are chained to a wall socket. Phase 2, the high-stake challenge, the desert stress test. To break this chain, the apex operators of 2026 are shifting their gaze from the ground to the sky. We are executing the high-stakes challenge. We packed a Starlink standard kit and drove 2 hours outside the city, completely abandoning the Etisalat and Do fiber network, driving deep into the notorious disconnected dunes of the Arabian desert. There are no cell towers here. There is no infrastructure. If a traditional worker came out here, their professional existence would be mathematically erased. We deployed the phase array antenna on the sand. Within minutes, internal motors self-aligned to the dish to track the constellation moving overhead. We did not plug it into the wall, we ran the system of a portable battery pack. The result completely shattered the paradigm of traditional telecommunication. We initiated a high-fidelity 4K video conference with an executive in London and New York. There was a zero jitter, there was no packet loss. We pulled down a massive gigabyte-heavy financial dataset in seconds. The latency hovered between 20 and 40 milliseconds, a response time that easily supports real-time, high-frequency trading and algorithmic execution. We achieved download speed pushing 300 to 400 Mbps. We were standing in an environment hostile to human life, surrounded by endless sand. And yet, our digital presence was more dominant and structurally sound than a competitor sitting in a coffee shop in the DIFC. This stress test proves a fundamental shift in the physics of the work. Your operational capacity is no longer dictated by the municipality's willingness to lay cable to your location. You carry your infrastructure in a backpack. If you are a high-stake remote worker, orbital connectivity isn't just a luxury, it is an ultimate risk mitigation protocol. It is the only way to remain unshakable when the ground-level infrastructure fails. Phase 3, the myth-busting Contrarian, the physics of the low Earth orbit. When you mention satellite internet to an amateur, they immediately dismiss it. They recall the legacy VSAT system of the past, systems that suffered from agonizing lag, dropped signal, and massive bulky equipment. To master this transition, you must become the myth-busting Contrarian. You must understand the physics of why Starlink completely annihilates the legacy satellite technology. Traditional satellite internet relies on geostationary, the geosatellites. These massive satellites are parked in an orbit approximately 36,000 km above the Earth's equator. When you send a signal to a geosatellite, the data has to travel 36,000 km into space, process and travel 36,000 km back down. The law of the physics dictate that this massive distance creates a latency of 600 to 800 milliseconds if you try to negotiate a fast-paced corporate deal with nearly 1 second delay on your audio. You will lose the rhythm of the conversation and you will lose the deal. Starlink does not use geostationary orbit. It deploys a constellation of thousands for low Earth orbit LEO satellites. These units fly at an altitude of just 550 kilometers. Do the math. Starlink satellites are roughly 65 times closer to the Earth than the traditional satellite. Because the data has to travel a fraction of the distance, the latency collapses to 20 to 40 milliseconds. The data moves at the speed of the light through the vacuum of the space, completely bypassing the congested, convoluted network of traditional routers and ocean cables. Metropolitan reliability is a myth that could cost you your competitive edge. While your peers rely on fiber network that has to route through dozens of ground-breaking choke points, your data is firing directly into the stratosphere, bouncing off an orbital node and landing directly at its destination. You're not using a backup connection, you have bypassed the traditional grid entirely to access a structurally superior transmission medium. The future of the work belongs exclusively to those who understand and weaponize the orbital architecture. Phase 4, the 2026 orbital execution, the TDRA license. For years, the use of Starlink in the UAE was a legal gray, restricting apex operators from fully deploying the technology. But the regulatory framework has violently shifted to accommodate the future. On March 18, 2026, the UAE's Telecommunication and Digital Government Regulatory Authority (TDRA) officially granted Starlink a 10-year license to operate. the UAE was added to the officially availability map. The technology was no longer an underground workaround, it has become a fully sanctioned, regulated and commercially viable telecommunication weapon. You must execute the logistics of this upgrade. The economics are startling efficient. For a baseline of 300 dirhams per month, you secure a residential standard plan, granting you unlimited priority data. The hardware kit, the phased array antenna and the Wi-Fi 6 router require a one-time capital expenditure of roughly AED 1,465. If you demand extreme portability, the new Starlink Mini, a USB-C powered backpack-sized dish, is also available for AED 1099. Compare this to your vanity premium you pay for a standard apartment in a city center just to access or do fiber. You are paying AED 150,000 dirhams a year in rent just to sit near a fastest router. With the 2026 TDRA approval, the structural boundaries of where you can live and work in the UAE has been mathematically erased. You no longer need to check if a villa compound has a fiber installed. You do not need to wait 3 weeks for a technician to pull a cable to your new office. You unbox the hardware, point it at the sky, and you instantly possess Tier 1 enterprise-grade connectivity. Whether you are setting up a temporary corporate command center at an outdoor exhibition, operating a remote construction site, or simply ensuring your home office never drops a critical call, the Orbital execution is instantaneous. You have effectively purchased your geographic freedom for 300 dirhams a month. Phase 5, the visual, what if, sovereign autonomy. We have diagnosed the fragility of the fiber grid. We have analyzed the physics of a low Earth orbit. We have reviewed the 2026 regulatory execution. Now you must internalize the ultimate power dynamics this creates, sovereign autonomy. Let us explore the visual what if. Imagine closing a multi-million-dollar deal from the middle of an Arabian desert. Your competitors are sitting in their sterile, fluorescent-lit cubicle in London or New York. The background of your Zoom call is a stunning, rugged peak of Hajar Mountain or the endless shifting red dunes of Rubal Khali. You're completely isolated from a human congestion, yet your voice is crystal clear. Your data synthesis is instantaneous. There is not a single lag spike. Your environment projects absolute unshakable power. You're demonstrating to the stakeholder that you are not bound by the limitation of a traditional infrastructure. You operate on a higher plane, literally and metaphorically. This is a sovereign operator in their apex state. You have ditched the cable. You have escaped the rent trap of a city center because you no longer need the city's grid to survive. You move your primary residence to a sprawling, low-cost luxury villa in Russell, slashing your living expense by 40%. You deploy the Starlink standard dish on your roof for a permanent 400 Mbps connectivity. On the weekend, you throw the Starlink Mini in your 4x4 and head into the deep desert, confident that if an emergency executive board meeting is called, you can log in from the sand dune and command the room. The traditional employees build their life around their internet connection. The apex operator forces the internet connectivity to mold to their life. You have turned the most isolated sands on Earth into a high-speed, high-leverage corporate office. You have achieved the absolute universal connectivity. Look closely at the blinking light on your fiber optic router. You're trusting your entire career, your massive financial deal, and your professional reputation to a thin glass thread buried in the dirt, managed by a localized utility company. When the next construction accident happens, or when the 5G towers are saturated during a massive event, the amateur remote worker will scramble in panic. They will drop off the call. They will lose the trade. They will be mathematically silenced. The apex operators will not even notice the outage. Their data is already in the orbit. Stop accepting the fragile status quo of the metropolitan infrastructure. Become the myth-busting contrarian. Embrace the physics of the low Earth orbit. Leverage the 2026 UAE Starlink rollout and decouple your career from the ground. Secure your orbital sovereignty. Process the data, execute the strategy, and I'll see you at the top.